Hi guys, I'm back with another layout for the Pink Paislee design team, and this time I'm going to work in my traveler's notebook. I have got the new Indigo and Ivy range here, and I've got a couple of photos from my birthday last month, and I just want to do a fun page in my notebook. Now this Indigo and Ivy line is so pretty. It's full of pretty pinks and watercolors, and that's exactly what I'm going to work with today because pink is so on brand for me. And I was thinking that since my photos have got balloons in them, I wanted to create a cut file or find a cut file that had something to do with balloons. So that's exactly what I'm going to go and do now. So I've just started in my Silhouette software and I have got this balloons cut file from Paige Evans. But I don't actually want a million different balloons. I just want this one here with its string hanging out, but you can see here it is attached to some other ones. So I need to edit this cut file a little bit first. So I'm going to zoom in so we can see what I'm doing. The first thing I want to do is double click onto the cut file, which brings up this point mode, and I want to right click onto this point here and I'm going to break the path. And just so I can see what I'm doing, because there still is actually going to be 2 points in here, I want to just pop those apart so I can see where the break is. And I'm going to do the same thing down here, right click, break the path, and then just move it out the road so I can see the two different paths. Now if I click off here and you click onto it again, it is all still one cut file, so I want to right click it and release the compound path because I don't need any of these bits, and so to make it easier I'm just going to delete those until I can see my single balloon again. Then I'm going to double click again and come back into the point mode. And at this point I want to drag both of these points together and they'll sort of magnetize together and become one path again. I am going to make that a curve so I get my little handles on either side and can just sort of adjust those until they look visually right. Obviously there's no reference point anymore, but you can get a vague sort of curve there for the balloon. And now I have my single balloon. If I zoom out we can see that, and I can delete all the rest of this cut file because I no longer need it. There are 3 parts to this cut file again though, so I'm just going to make that a compound path again and turn it around so it is an upright balloon. So that is one part of the cut file that I need. I'm going to cut that 3 times for my page. But the other thing I want to create is a stencil to do some background mixed media on my page. And the part of this balloon that I want to do that is just the outline of the actual balloon without the little tail. So I'm going to do a little bit more work on this. I'm going to duplicate him again and release the compound path because I don't need these outside pieces. So I shift click the outside piece and that just gives me those 3 inside bits, and I can delete them. And then I'm essentially going to repeat the exact same process. So I'm double clicking, right clicking onto the point to break the path. I'm going to do that again over here. And then we can just move these out the way. You can see because they're magnetized, they do want to join onto each other. So join those two, move that down flat. Now again, this is all still one path, so I right click it and release the compound path. I can delete the tail, and when I zoom back out, I have a solid balloon shape. So essentially what I've done here is just resized that balloon shape a million little times to create, this is roughly the size of my Traveler's Notebook page, and I've just sprinkled those balloons across the page, and I've duplicated my balloon outline 3 times so that I can get the 3 different sized balloons for my page. And then I'm going to cut all of this out of one single sheet of cardstock. And now I've done all the hard work. The fun fun can begin. So you can see here I've got my stencil and I've got my trimmed down piece of paper. I'm going to work with that with one background, and I'll split that later. When I created my stencil here, I did make sure that none of the balloons are going to go over the center mark, so none of those are going to hang over where I have to cut, which gives me that clean line down the middle. Now the background's pink, so I'm not adding any color to my modeling paste here. I'm just adding it in white, and it's just going to give the background a really lovely texture and just this really light pattern of balloons. I'm just adding a thin layer across it, peeling it off, and there you can see my lovely little balloon background. And I just have to let that dry now. So I'm going to work on my cut files while that dries, although I will say I'm going to end up cheating and hitting that with a hairdryer anyway to make sure it is fully dry before I start again. But what I want to do is back these balloons, and I really love some of the navy blue patterns that are in this 6x6 paper pad, and because it's the 6x6 paper pad, it makes the patterns the ideal scale for traveler's notebooks. So the 12x12 papers are really pretty, but sometimes those patterns are way too big for a traveler's notebook, so having the smaller size, the smaller scale works really nicely for these smaller pages. In the Indigo and Ivy range, there is this sort of embellishment pack, and one of the things that's in here are this beautiful sequin mix. I don't even have to make a sequin mix, it is already done for me. So there's really pretty navy blue, gold, and this iridescent pink sequin, which is just beautiful. So I'm going to kind of create a little shaker balloon here. So I've just roughly trimmed out my background paper and I'm sprinkling some sequins on top. Then I've added a cutout piece of plastic from a page protector that I've cut down, and then adding my cut file on top. I'm going to take all of that over to my sewing machine and just stitch around the balloon. And in the end, what that will give me is a little shaker. Now all I need to do is just slip my scissors underneath the cut file there and trim out the background paper and the leftover plastic, and I have this really fun, very flat, so perfect for a traveler's notebook, little shaker balloon. I'm essentially going to repeat that process 2 more times for these other 2 balloons, just minus the shaker part. So I'm just stitching the background onto the cut file and then trimming the edges around there too. Now once these 3 balloons are done, I am pretty much ready to assemble my page. So I just need to make sure that that background stencil piece is actually dry, because I want to be able to cut it in half and then glue that onto my traveler's notebook page. So the reason I have trimmed that in half is because even though this is the middle of my book, I don't want to fold in the paper where the spine of the notebook is. It just will end up warping and bubbling, and I'll never be able to get it stuck in the right place. So it's much easier when you're doing something like this to just trim any background that you have, any photos or whatever, into the middle of the notebook, just to allow that bending space for the book to actually open and shut. I can place my 3 balloons, and I'm going to place 2 on the left and 1 on the right, because I want my 2 little photos to go on the right as well. But I think there's this really beautiful specialty paper. It's a gold foiled printed vellum, and as you can see, it's beautiful. It's this beautiful marble pattern, and I want to make a strip for my photos to sit on. So I'm just working out which side of the vellum I'm going to trim down. I don't want too much gold in there, just enough for it to be special. A lot of it is going to get covered up with the photos anyway, but it's going to give me a landing place for my photos and help them just stand off the page a little bit, as well as hold my title for this page. So now I've got my strip, I can go ahead and start gluing everything down. I'm just working out this actual spacing. That little balloon is going to have to sit onto the vellum a little bit. And because I don't want the glue to show through the vellum, I'm gluing my photos onto the vellum, and then the only place that I'm going to glue this vellum down is behind the photos. So you're never going to see the vellum. It is going to end up floating a little bit. The title is going to help to stick down that bottom piece of it, but it really is pretty, and it doesn't matter that it is a little bit loose. And once I replace my run out glue runner, I can finally stick down these little balloons. And like I said, I did want one to overlap the vellum piece, and the other two are just getting stuck directly to the background paper. I'm also sticking down the little tails to make sure that they don't flap around too much. And the bigger one, I am going to just position it slightly, only ever so slightly off the side and the bottom, just to give a little bit more depth to the page. Indigo and Ivy has this amazing alpha. It's gold foil, it's puffy stickers, it's everything I could hope for. And so I'm going to use this to add in my title down the bottom here, which is going to be Never Too Old, because I don't believe you can ever be too old for a confetti-filled balloon. So I'm just adding 2 lines of my title down here. And then the page wouldn't be complete without a few more sparkles, so I am going to add some of these loose sequins here to my page and just placing them first, and then I'll glue them down. But I really love the look of that with all the sparkles, and it's sort of like confetti across the page, I guess. The balloons, the really light white balloons in the background with the sequins on top is just super pretty. Now to glue down my sequins, I use multi-matte medium, and I just score it a little bit out onto a scrap paper, and then the easiest way to place these is just using some tweezers. You'll see me still faffing about with them, but that way you're not adding too much glue directly to your page. It's just enough to the back of the sequin. I find that if you make sure that you get the glue so it goes through the little hole on the sequin and sort of squirts through when you push it down, it will hold your sequin onto the page no problem, even in a notebook like this, which gets open and shut all the time. I do miss the one at the top there. You'll notice I never glued that down. I didn't notice that until I lifted the book up and it slipped off the page, so I did go and stick that down later on. Now a couple of these sequins I'm adding to the side of the vellum, which again helps to glue it in place. It keeps it from flapping up too much, which is another tricky way to get that vellum stuck down. These tiny little iridescent pink ones, they're so hard to see on camera, but they just add such a pretty shine to the page. And I so love this line. I love how this page came out, and it seems like the perfect way to celebrate a birthday. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, don't forget to check out my Patreon page because there are even more videos over there. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!